I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. For today's moment of silence, next Wednesday is Valentine's Day. And I think we can take this moment to remember those we loved and lost and still have friends and family that lift us up. Let's have that moment. Thank you. Luann Kidder with Lake County is going to come and tell us about their upcoming gala.
Hello. I want to invite all of you to the Lake County Gala. We're going to have Debbie Martellus-Powell as our speaker. It's in Leesburg, so it is very cool. I urge everybody to attend. It's only $150. Please. I have petitions for Barbie Hall and for Stephanie Dukes on the table if anybody's a Lake County person and have not signed. The other thing is, how many people live in Lake Denham, Newell, or Danby? Dabney, okay, a few. We're having a neighborhood meeting, so if anybody wants to, if you know anybody who's a Democrat who's down there, please invite them to our gathering. It's going to be Saturday, March 9th at 1 p.m. at the Homestead Recreation Center. And I'll tell you a little problem that we're having. That is a new area, and many of the people may have registered to vote, but they're not updated in band. So we're going to invite everybody that we can, but if you know other people, please invite them or have them contact me if they're interested. Thank you very much.
Today's speaker, we are very honored to have Carlos Guillermo Smith, already three terms in the House, the floor is... and now running for the Senate. Carlos, come on up.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, Villages Democratic Club. I remember right before I came up, actually, someone whispered in my ear, I hope you have your wits about you. I love those words of inspiration, by the way. I love that. Folks, good morning, Sumter County. How are you doing this morning? It is so good to be actually back here. And I know that we're in Sumter, but this is so much more than Sumter County. How many Lake County folks do we have here this morning? All right, Lake County. How many Marion County folks do we have here this morning? We have some Marion County folks. How many folks do we have that are not from the Tri-County area that are here? That's me right here, Orange County, right? Right? It's good to be here. I'm Carlos Guillermo Smith. I was elected to the State House of Representatives in 2016. I served 3 two-year terms until 2022. And I say that it's good to be back at the Villages Democratic Club because this is not my first appearance before the Villages Democratic Club. I had to check my notes. I'm like, it's been a while, it's been a minute, that's my bad. But the last time I was here in front of you all was in September of 2018. I was a member of the State House back then. there was just as many people then as there is now, which is great to see. And the reason I was invited to speak that morning was because I was a surrogate and big advocate for what we called Amendment 13 at the time. Do y'all remember what Amendment 13 was? I don't remember any of the numbers. Amendment 13 was the constitutional amendment that was on the ballot that year to protect greyhound racing dogs. Well, folks, thanks to your support, voters passed that, and we were finally able to ban cruel and inhumane greyhound racing in the state of Florida. I hope it's all right. I'm moving your laptop because I have some notes. I'm not going to be all off the top of my head. I got to put my notes down here. I hope that's okay. I'm not going to break your computer, I promise. So yeah, it's been since 2018 was the last time that I was here, and I remember how much energy and enthusiasm there was at the Village's Democratic Club. A lot has happened since 2000. Right, I'm not trying to trigger anyone, but a lot has happened since 2018. We elected and re-elected Ron DeSantis. We elected Joe Biden president of the United States. We had a deadly pandemic. And we have a Florida legislature with a supermajority that has taken our state in a dangerous direction. How is it dangerous? Well, families are being gouged out of affordable housing. We have a massive public school teacher shortage in the state of Florida. It doesn't help that we're 48th in the nation for teacher pay in the state of Florida, does it? It also doesn't help that this legislature has worsened the public school teacher shortage because they've turned our classrooms into political battlefields. They've handed our schools over to book banning extremists, and they chose to follow Governor Ron DeSantis off a cliff and run Florida into the ground to help him run for president. How did that work out for you, Florida Republicans, right? I appreciate your sense of humor. But folks, during all of that chaos, the real problems in our state were ignored. Republicans in the legislature were singularly obsessed with culture wars and with solving problems that don't even exist. And in 2022, the last election cycle, Republicans felt so threatened by my advocacy and my effectiveness as a state house member that they gerrymandered me out of my Orlando-based house district. I lost my re-election in 2022 after they spent millions of dollars in ads smearing me in my record to try to unseat me. They thought they'd won, but after I saw what they started doing with their super majority in the state Senate and the state House, I immediately got myself back out there. I'm back, I'm stronger than ever, and I'm a Democrat running for state Senate. Thank you. Yeah, no more Mr. Nice Gay here. Okay, 2024 is going to be Return of the Jedi. It is the year that all of us take back Florida, because I am determined, as I know that you are, to defend our fundamental rights and freedoms. Am I right about that? So, since we launched our campaign in April, we've seen a tremendous outpouring of support. Over 1,700 people have donated to our grassroots campaign because they need champions in Tallahassee that they know and trust, that are going to stand up for hardworking Floridians, They're not gonna stand up for property insurance companies who want to double, triple, quadruple your premiums. They need people that are not gonna go to Tallahassee to be advocates for giant utility companies who are raising rates on everyone, as FPL is currently doing in the state of Florida and others. People have been supporting our campaign for Senate because they know we need fighters in the state capitol who are actually willing to take action to prevent gun violence and to take action on climate change. And that's one of the first things that I did when I was elected to the State House in 2016. I was elected only a few months after the horrific mass shooting at Pulse nightclub, which happened in my community, which happened in the Senate district where I'm running to represent. And the first bill that I filed as a freshman lawmaker, it feels like forever ago, but the first bill that I introduced in the State House of Representatives was a first ever for Florida. It was a bill to ban military-style assault weapons and large-capacity magazines. And that's not the end-all solution to gun violence prevention, but it is a critical piece of solving the puzzle. And I introduced that bill because, a lot of folks, I was saying hi when you were coming into the clubhouse. I was, shaking hands and saying hello to everyone. I got a few compliments. They said, I like your ribbon. I like your pin that you have here. Thank you. Thank you. I'm wearing a rainbow ribbon. I've worn it ever since 2016. And the reason I wore it was to remind me of my commitment to honor those taken at Pulse nightclub with action. Honoring them with action. We need people in Tallahassee who stand for something. Right? We need people who are willing to stand up for our public school teachers, for our workers, for their right to earn fair wages, to do the work of actually lowering the cost of prescription drugs, to take on the for-profit nursing home industry in the state of Florida that has lowered the quality of care. We need leaders who are willing to defend the rights of women to make their own private medical decisions without political interference in that decision. And yes, we need leaders who will stand up and who will be the voice of LGBTQ Floridians when Republicans continue to try to attack us and dehumanize us. There's a reason they didn't like it when I was serving in the Florida House of Representatives. Because I asked them difficult questions. I called them on their BS. We pushed back. We know that they had the votes. Yes, they had the votes. But if they were going to push these culture war attacks on us as they did every single day, we were going to make it hard for them. We were going to make it difficult. We were going to make it painful for them, as painful as it was going to be for us when it was going to be implemented. So I would ask hard questions, and they would stop the legislative process when I asked those tough questions. My last year on the floor as a member of the State House of Representatives, they put a bill on the floor that many of you remember was called Don't Say Gay. Right? And the bill sponsor is presenting his bill. He's taking questions on the bill. He doesn't take questions on legislation anymore because he no longer serves in the Florida House because he was indicted on federal charges and he's now serving time in federal prison. I digress, that's a total side note. It's a total side note, but the sponsor of Don't Say Gay, who is now serving time in federal prison, he took my question, and it was a serious one. I asked him, I said, Representative, what is so dangerous about someone like me, an openly gay man? What is so dangerous about families like mine that we must pass a state law to prohibit conversations about my families and the inclusion or visibility of my families and my community in public schools? I never got an answer. The Speaker of the House halted legislative proceedings. He basically stopped the process and he said, members, I just want to remind everyone to not make their questions about this legislation personal. Well, folks, many of you are engaged in politics, you're engaged in organizing, you're members of the Village's Democratic Club, because oftentimes the political is personal. It's personal. It's personal when they attack our fundamental rights and freedoms, is it not? It's personal when politicians focus on culture war attacks rather than solving real problems. It's personal when Floridians can no longer afford Florida because our governor is checked out because he decided that he wanted to run for president and run our state into the ground. We need champions in Tallahassee who are willing to hold this lawless administration accountable, by the way. And speaking of holding them accountable when they violate our constitutional rights, you may have heard about a little lawsuit that I won against the DeSantis administration a few months ago over public records. So it took 2 years of litigation, and Ron fought me every step of the way. What was this lawsuit? So during the pandemic, the DeSantis administration unlawfully denied my requests for public records related to COVID-19 and how it was spreading in my community in Orlando as students and staff were going back to school. School board members wanted me to make this public records request because they needed more data on how transmissions were impacting different age groups in Orange County. They needed to know that to decide what their school masking policy was going to be. They needed to know, are we seeing pediatric hospitalizations in Orange County? If so, at what rate? We need to know this, Carlos, because we're trying to figure out how to bring kids and teachers safely back to school. I requested these detailed records, and the DeSantis administration broke the law when they said you can't have them. So I sued them, because we have a constitutional right to public records. And the public has a right to receive those records in a timely fashion, because this is the free state of Florida and we should have the freedom to make informed decisions impacting the health and safety of our families, right? I didn't think I was going to sue him. Well, I did. The department lied about the existence of these records in front of a judge in court. They said they didn't exist. And they did everything to restrict and downplay the threat of COVID-19 to help Ron DeSantis run for re-election as governor, even while the Delta variant was ripping through the state of Florida. And of course, that was a decision. That decision to hide information and downplay everything was a decision that cost many lives. But we persisted, we held them accountable, and we won. And as a result of us winning our lawsuit, the so-called Surgeon General and the Department of Health, they are now required to be more transparent and more frequent in their reporting of public health data related to COVID-19. They were forced to hand over public records that they claimed didn't exist, and we protected the public's constitutional right to know. And by the way, that transparency that they are legally bound to comply with as a result of this settlement agreement, that more frequent reporting of public health data that they are required to do, they have to do that for 36 months. The Department of Health and the DeSantis administration is held to that standard because I had the gall to sue them and persist all the way to the end. Lawsuits are the only thing that this governor understands. I'm going to tell you that right now. And it matters because an open government, because Florida is supposed to be the sunshine state government in the sunshine, is more accountable to the people it serves. It is a better government. It is a more responsive government. It is a stronger government. And folks, you better believe that I'm going to continue holding DeSantis accountable as a member of the state Senate. Until then, we all have our hands full. We all have our hands full. Yes, DeSantis lost Iowa by 30%. Yes, DeSantis lost all 99 counties in Iowa. Yes, his presidential campaign completely collapsed and he was utterly humiliated on the national stage. Should have won. Georgia. But Republicans in the legislature, they are still determined to follow him off a cliff. Like I said before, they handed our schools over to book banning extremists and slavery apologists. That was last session. This session, the GOP supermajority wants to repeal all child labor laws for 16 and 17-year-olds to allow for large corporations to exploit them for cheap labor. Allow them to work more than 30 hours a week past midnight on a school night without meal breaks. Children. They want to slash wages by repealing local living wage ordinances. They want to expand, get this, they want to expand Don't Say Gay or Trans into public and private workplaces. I thought the Don't Say Gay law was about protecting children. Turns out it was actually about bigotry and homophobia and transphobia. And if their banning binge wasn't enough after banning abortions and banning books and banning dictionaries, Webster's Dictionary, they're banning ESG, DEI, CRT, OMG. I can't even keep up with all these acronyms. What does all of this stand for? What are they obsessing over? Now they want to ban rainbow flags in government spaces and public schools. So I'm running for Florida Senate District 17, which is in Orlando. It's an Orange County-based district. Democrats have to win this Senate district in order to get closer to breaking the GOP supermajority in the Senate, also in the House. It's important to understand that in Tallahassee, while yes, I would be representing District 17 in Orlando, that we are dealing with issues of statewide significance. The people that we elect to all of these districts matter. It matters the type of representation we have in Tallahassee, regardless of from what geographic region they are. Because I can tell you right now, when it comes to focusing on making Florida affordable again, defending our fundamental rights and freedoms, trying to solve real problems, I'm going to be doing that for everyone. That includes people that are in Sumter County, Lake County, Marion County, Orange County, Duval County, Leon County, doesn't matter. We're doing this on behalf of all Floridians. And the issues that they're dealing with these are not fights between the left and the right. It's about between what's right and what is wrong. Based on the awesome energy that's here in the room with the Villages Democratic Club, like it always is, and by the way, I keep hearing this rumor that the Villages Democratic Club is the most active membership and Democratic club in the entire state of Florida. We need to replicate the energy and the enthusiasm in this room. We do not have this in Orange County, I'm going to tell you that right now. And if someone's recording this, I think they need to share it, because we need what's happening right here in this room, the organizing, the enthusiasm, the commitment, the showing up. We need this across the state of Florida so that we can actually take back the state of Florida, because Florida is worth fighting for, folks. It is worth fighting for. And what I feel from this room is I feel a lot of hope. That hope is still alive in our state. It's alive not only because of the people in this room, it's alive because of the wins and the victories that we've been accumulating. Since Ron won his re-election, Democrats were elected to all competitive races in what was considered to be red Duval County in Jacksonville. We elected Democratic Mayor Donna Deacon to replace a Republican mayor of Jacksonville. A lot of people consider Duval as that very red area of the state where Democrats are now in charge. In my area in Orlando, we had a special election recently where a Democratic candidate was running to fill a vacant state house seat. It was a +11 DeSantis seat, and Democrat Tom Keene flipped that seat blue. We now call him Representative Tom Keene. And so hope is alive, not only because of these victories, but also because folks in this room helped collect over 1 million petitions to get abortion on the ballot in November. A lot of cool stuff going on. And while our campaign and our campaigns for office, they've always been focused on the issues, right here in 2024 in Florida, given the environment that we're facing with so many attacks coming from Tallahassee, our Senate campaign is also about giving Floridians hope. Hope that in Florida, we actually can still elect people who care about people. We actually can still elect people who stand for something, who actually fight and are driven by unifying principles like freedom, like equality, like respect for every person, regardless of their age, their ability, their religion, their race, their gender, who they love. That these motivating, unifying principles of freedom and equality and dignity for every person is what drives them to run for public office and become a public servant. That's what I'm fighting for. That is what I am driven for. I think we need more people in the political process who are driven by unifying principles rather than wanting to divide us. That is what our campaign represents. And so folks, if you believe in that message, thank you. If you believe in that message, I need you to help me out. I want you to consider joining the 1,700 people who have donated to our campaign since last April. I know that you're in the villages. I know that you either live in Sumter County or Marion County or Lake County, and you can't vote for me. I know. But you can donate for me. Donate. Actually, a lot of you got a flyer about me when you came in this morning with a QR code that takes you straight to carlosguillermosmith.com. Please consider a contribution because we are not relying on corporate contributions from actors like FPL and Big Sugar and the Florida Chamber of Commerce or the NRA or Publix. You know, Publix is they're insurrectionists now. Shopping is a pleasure there, but they love funding Republicans and they love funding revolts against our democracy. They're not going to be contributing to my campaign. I digress. It's why I'm depending on people like you to actually fuel our grassroots campaign and send us back to Tallahassee to continue holding this administration accountable. And I know that we're short on time, and I want to be respectful of your time. But I think that this is something worth uniting behind. The idea that we need a new legislature that will change the direction of our state towards one of hope, where everyone has the freedom to be healthy, the freedom to be prosperous, the freedom to be safe. That's why I'm running for the Florida Senate. That's a future that I think is worth fighting for, and one that we can't do without groups like the Villages Democratic Club, without groups that are organizing around the state to take our state back from these extremists. So I'm gonna ask you, do you think that we need to have our voices heard? Yes. Do we need to send a message to Tallahassee that we will not accept their extremist policies? Yes. So I ask that you join me in helping to make that happen, to go to carlosguillermosmith.com and make a small contribution towards our effort, but also more importantly, continue doing the work that you're doing here. Because I know that the Villages Democratic Club is not just a social club, it's not a social club. You all are doing the work, you're gathering petitions, you are making sure that we get Stephanie Dukes, that we get, is it Ms. Hall, Barbara Hall? We need to get these Democrats on the ballot. We need to get them elected to the state legislature to be the voice of reason. We need to make sure that we get out the word about our U.S. Senate candidate, Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, who's running against Rick Scott. Rick Scott, Pink Slip Rick. You know, the guy also known as Voldemort, who also wants to end Medicare as we know it. Folks, we've got real work to do. And I think that with your support, Together, we can take back Florida. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Really deep from inside the crowd. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to take a selfie with all of you if you don't mind. We're going to take a selfie really quick with everyone. Stand back up, stand up.
Carlos, could you help us out with our 50-50 drawing?
Absolutely, the 50-50 drawing, yes, okay. This is the moment of truth. Let's do this. All right, so we're doing the 50-50 drawing. Let's do this. How many do I get to select? 3. Okay, I get to select 3. And then, how much do they win?
How many people participated?
Okay, I hope y'all donated big, because this is where the big prize is gonna be. All right, we're gonna start with ticket number 1. All right? All right, first ticket, 689-318. Again, 689-318. Going once. Going twice. Come on, 689-318. Where are you? We have a winner! 689-318. Here we go. All right, this is she's got the cash right here. This is the big bonus. All right, drum roll, please. Winner number 2. Are we ready? Are we ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. 288-340. 288-340. 288-340. Here we go. Yes! Congratulations. There we go. Dennis, this is rigged, I'm telling you. No, I'm just kidding. It's not rigged.
You can take me out for dinner now.
That's right, that's right. Okay, you owe Diane dinner. Keep it in the family here. All right, so maybe so that y'all don't think this is rigged, I'm just gonna close my eyes and I'm gonna pull the last one here. All right, last one. 689-228. 689-228. 689-228. Congratulations, Joe. You got it. You got it. Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you, Village of Democratic Club. Y'all are awesome. Thank you.
We're gonna do question and answers, or we did. Before that, we thought we might improve Carlos's closet with a club t-shirt. So if you want to ask questions, come up to the microphones and we'll take your questions.
Is there a microphone on the side? Oh yeah, there is a microphone on the side. Perfect. Yeah, this is Ask Anything. I've been in the legislature for 6 years. It's hard to stump me.
A simple question. When are you running for governor?
Thank you for that. I did not plant that question. I'm gonna have to consult with my husband Jarek because, as you know, being in public life can often be a strain on all of our families. So And statewide races in Florida, they are expensive. They are expensive, but stay tuned. Stay tuned. Let's get to the Florida Senate first, right? Thank you.
I really like what you're doing on cultural issues. You're taking them head on. My question is, would you do the same if you are elected for affordable housing?
Yes, thank you. The question is, what can we do about affordable housing, about housing affordability? You know, so much of what's driving inflation in the state of Florida has to do with housing affordability. That's driven by many things. First and foremost, soaring property insurance rates. Property insurance rates are through the roof, and I can tell you right now, what the legislature has come up with is not doing anything to lower rates. We have a close to $14 billion with a B budget surplus in the state of Florida. I think that with all of those excess funds, what we need to be doing is we need to be coming up with more opportunities to put money in the pockets of homeowners that have seen their property insurance rates go through the roof. And we need to make sure that any reforms that are adopted in Tallahassee on the issue of property insurance is not one-sided towards the property insurer, but something that's actually going to bring savings down to consumers. We need to make sure that these insurers are also being properly regulated. We were told over and over again that the reason property insurance rates are soaring through the roof is because of lawsuits and litigation. And yet they made it so much harder for people to be able to get paid their premiums and sue their insurance company when they don't pay them what they're owed. They've taken away all those lawsuits, and what has happened? Your premiums have increased. They've increased, and what they're doing is not solving the problem. And for those of us who are renters, and we're seeing rents are going through the roof, we need to do more to make sure that we're protecting renters from being rent gouged. You know, during a hurricane, you are protected as consumers from being price gouged on things like bottled water, batteries, gasoline, necessities that you need to survive. Well, folks, I think that housing is a necessity that people need to survive, and we need to do more to protect families from being rent gouged out of the state of Florida. So there's a lot that we need to do on housing affordability, and property insurance is first and foremost on the agenda for us when we return to Tallahassee, that's for sure. Great question, great question. Sir.
Hi, I'm a bit nervous about what the Florida State Supreme Court is going to do on the abortion issue, the petitions that we all filled out. Where do you see that going, and is there anything we can do if they say, no, sorry, it's tossed out?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that too. That's a great question. So for those who are not familiar with the process, which is complicated, before a constitutional amendment is approved to go on the ballot before voters, after all of the signatures are collected, it has to be given final clearance and approval by the Florida Supreme Court. Well, guess what? I think there's 7 justices in the state Supreme Court, I think. 6 out of 7 of them are DeSantis appointees. So we went from actually a liberal majority in the state Supreme Court before DeSantis was elected to now a conservative supermajority in the state Supreme Court. And guess what? Ashley Moody and the DeSantis administration, they are making legal arguments in front of the state Supreme Court telling them that they want them to remove the abortion rights amendment from the ballot because they claim that the language is confusing. Okay, it's a lie. They are mortified that people are actually going to have the right to make private medical decisions about their own bodies without political interference. What do I think is going to happen? Well, we listened to the Supreme Court justices their responses to what the lawyers were saying just this week. And I am hopeful because many of the conservative justices pushed back on the arguments from Ashley Moody's attorneys saying, hey, they said things like, hey, listen, we are not here to decide whether this amendment is a wolf or not. We are here to decide whether this amendment is a wolf in sheep's clothing. If we think it's a bad amendment, that is not up to us to decide. We are here to decide whether it is a deceptive amendment. These were conservative justices who were pushing back on the Attorney General's arguments. So I'm hopeful after that the Supreme Court will do what is right and what is constitutionally required of them, which is to put that ballot initiative in front of voters this November. Thank you.
Again, about housing. So there's a bill for the unhoused people. Yes. So instead of fixing the problem, what are they going to do with these people? Are they going to throw them in jail? I'm sorry. You need to make housing available. You make it possible for people to have the dignity of living somewhere. It's not drug dealers, blah, 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 living on the streets. It is families that have lost their home
Thank you.
due to outrageous rent. And of course, if they own their house, then they can't pay the taxes and they can't pay this. It is time for Florida to recognize that all people have the right to housing and education. They are not the pro-life people. They are the pro-birth people, and they don't give a shit.
I concur. So I've seen the bill you're talking about, and for those who don't know, the bill that she's referring to is a bill that criminalizes unsheltered and homeless folks from being able to live on the street. It requires that local governments actually round up homeless folk and put them in camps. And then the governor said that along with that, if the legislature would just do this, if they would round the homeless folks up and put them in camps where they would have access to restrooms and other services, that he would then offer resources and funding to get them housed and move them into housing, et cetera, et cetera. So I've got an idea. How about we skip the camps and we just do the funding for transitional sheltering, and we actually do something, to your point, about rents, because I listened to the public comments that were made in the legislature when the bill was being heard, because I'm a nerd and I turn on the Florida channel and I watch it, even when I'm not in the legislature, I'm watching. And many of the experts on homelessness and on housing affordability and who understand these problems because they're working with these communities, they came up and they testified in public comment and they said, hey, listen, there is a misconception that the reason the homelessness crisis is getting worse is because more and more people are dealing with mental health issues. That is not the case. Yes, at the root of it, that there's a core population of folks who are unsheltered who are dealing with issues related to mental health, who are dealing with substance abuse. Yes, but what has grown from that of late is not more people dealing with these issues. The reason the homelessness population is growing is because families are getting rent gouged and they're being pushed out onto the streets, and they're going from living in apartments to living in their cars and sending their kids to school while they're living in the woods at night. That is happening to real folks. So to your point, yes, we have to do something about rents, soaring rents in the state of Florida if we're going to do something about the homelessness and unsheltered crisis. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm a native Floridian, Dade County, Orange County, for 50 years, and in the village. And my granddaughter is one of the victims of, she has a master's degree from Florida Southern, and her husband, works for his dad, who's a contractor, and they are pregnant, so they've had to move home with her mom, my daughter, as they cannot afford any, I mean, they were living at a postage stamp, $2,100, which is kind of east, you know, out east of Orlando. And I mean, what can these, I mean, she said, what did I get this degree for? I mean, and she's a teacher, in middle school math, God love her. I mean, I know you don't have a lot of answers, Carlos, but this is god-awful.
Well, and thank you for sharing your story. And, you know, you mentioned that she's a middle school teacher. Some of this is not rocket science. I mentioned earlier in my remarks that Florida is 48th in the nation for teacher pay. Right? How are we 48th in the nation? And by the way, we need to be able to make sure that we're rewarding some of those educators with what we call a supplemental increase. The supplemental increase helps those who have some of these degrees or specialized degrees be paid what they deserve based on their degree and their accreditation. That's really, really important. So we're a whole part of this. You know, I had to recently release a statement in favor of the Orange County Classroom Teachers Association as far as their position on collective bargaining, because they're at impasse with the district. They want to be able to proceed this year without an increase in healthcare costs. And I think it's really important that we stand with our teachers and stand with our unions on this, because they deserve to be paid more. Next question.
Thank you. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay, earlier you said that you would suggest putting a certain issue to a vote of the people. With no sarcasm to you, Mr. Smith, my question is, will that really do any good? A few years ago, we the people voted to return voting rights to people that served their time. The supermajority, or there may not have even been a supermajority, that managed to just bury that. They created debts that weren't being considered in the vote and shouldn't have been. I'm proud to say the legislator at the time, Page, spoke before a group of which I'm a member, and I did cross-examine. I'm not a lawyer, but I did cross-examine on that to the point where it looked to me like his face was turning color. But will it do any good to put the issue before the vote of the people if our very conservative legislature can just undo it? Do you agree that it was largely undone by our former criminals able to vote today and exercise that right?
You brought up a very good question, which is, why is it worth voting for these constitutional amendments if our Republican legislature is just going to disrespect the will of the voters anyway? Well, folks, I think it is a very important question that is on a lot of people's minds, and I want to warn you of the danger that comes with people getting complacent and thinking that their vote does not matter. Because that is a very dangerous place to be, because it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that suppresses voters without any new laws even passing. They stop wanting to participate because they fear that their vote is not going to count and is not going to matter. The amendment, I think it was Amendment 4 as well, to restore the voting rights of ex-felons and returning citizens was watered down by the legislature. It wasn't undone, but it was watered down substantially. And I think that was an affront to the voters. Now what we have in front of us, there's going to be two very important ballot initiatives. I'll tell you, I support both unequivocally. First is the ballot initiative to protect abortion rights from political interference. It's very clear, black and white language. To answer your question on a technical basis, I think it's going to be very difficult for even this legislature to figure out a way to get around this abortion rights amendment because of how cut and dry and black and white and legally solid that language that is going to be on the ballot is. So it is worth it. That's why we invested so many resources and so much money and so much time, so much of your time, your talent, and your treasure to get those signatures, because we think that this amendment is worth it. There's a second one that I will acknowledge Republicans now are working to undo before it's even passed. And that is an amendment to legalize cannabis for responsible adult use in the state of Florida. See, the way that they're doing it, I support that, by the way. I support it because, listen, is this the free state of Florida or is it not? Are we gonna have the freedom, to be able to buy legal weed in the state of Florida as adults and consume it responsibly as we do alcohol, regulate it as we do alcohol? And by the way, while doing it, create tens of thousands of jobs and boost our economy. There's a lot of protections that need to come with it. We need to make sure that the products are properly labeled, properly packaged to protect not only consumers, but also to protect children from accessing these products, okay? This is all really important. Now, what is the legislature doing before this amendment even goes in front of voters? They're trying to pass legislation this session to weaken the levels of THC in legal weed should we decide to legalize it. Okay, listen, this is why it's so, thank you. This is why it's so important to elect good people to the Florida legislature, because I can tell you right now, in the Florida Senate, I will be working to make sure that we respect the will of the voters on all of these constitutional amendments. It's good to be here.
You're like a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
A few things that I want to bring up. One is mental health, and Florida being on the floor with mental health, and it's such a big issue, especially with kids. And I actually heard the deputy superintendent of the Sumter County Schools say that we have 9,700 kids, and there are 5 mental health practitioners. Anyone who knows anything knows that that caseload is a little large, you know? So I think that's a really big, important issue, is mental health in the state of Florida, actually in the whole country, because kids are committing suicide, and especially in Florida where they have the guns to do it. The other thing is, this week it said that Florida came in last in nurses passing the national nursing exam, last in the entire country. We are a tremendous Asian population here in Florida, and they need to do something better about that, because we're not producing nurses. They're not passing the exam. And thank you for bringing up that lower THC level.
Of course, and I'll try to make my responses quick. These are great questions. First, on the question of mental health, I hate to bring it back to funding all the time, but funding is important. Florida usually toggles between 49th and 50th in the nation on mental health funding per capita. That is not great, and by the way, the first time I was ever PolitiFacted, you know, the PolitiFact news service, the first time I was ever PolitiFacted is when I said Florida's 49th in the nation in funding for mental health, and they gave me a mostly true, which by the way is like a huge, great deal for PolitiFact to say mostly true. So funding for mental health is important, and in schools, it's funding for school guidance counselors, school social workers. That is what is absolutely critical, because you're right, kids, especially after COVID-19, are dealing with so many mental health issues that need to be tackled by school social workers and guidance counselors in the schools. And one of the things we have working against us is Moms for Liberty is going out there opposing the idea of mental health services in our public schools. So that's just another reason to oppose Moms for Liberty. And then your second point was? The nurses. So we are on track to have one of the worst nursing shortages, staffing shortages in the country. We have to do more to invest in making sure that our nursing schools are incentivized to offer more nursing certifications and programs because one, we have to be graduating more nurses in the state of Florida. We have to make sure that our nurses are getting paid living wages. I was in the legislature my last year when they worked to lower the number of minimum hours that were required of nurses in nursing homes to care for residents. They lowered the standard, lowered it. Not good. A lot of my nursing home reforms are very targeted at making sure that we're doing right by our nurses and therefore doing right by our residents. And so that work is going to continue in the Florida Senate. Thank you.
Future-looking issue. What is the legislature doing about artificial intelligence and disinformation?
Thank you. Thank you. What's your name, sir?
Bill Penix.
Bill, thank you for your service, first and foremost, and thank you for the question. What the legislature is doing right now on AI is it looks like they are starting to tackle AI that, first and foremost, are dealing with bills that prohibit artificial intelligence in political campaigns. By the way, I think that is a good idea because we did. Listen, I've been duped by artificial intelligence already in photographs, right? You see a photo and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And then you realize you saw a fake photo that was produced by artificial intelligence. And that can have a really detrimental impact, not only in a lot of different ways, but also in our politics where people, campaigns and parties can continue to mislead and deceive voters into thinking certain things are true when they are not. So we are going to need a lot of regulation around AI, not only around the political side, but of course because of the jobs side and making sure that we're doing right by our workers and making sure that our workers are not replaced by artificial intelligence. I think the legislature can do more, but I know that that's going to be a really important priority when we get there next year. So thank you for that question. Thank you. And it looks like we got probably time for one more. Diane's telling me one more, so you're the lucky one.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a retired nurse with 40 years of service. The last 11 years I served as a school nurse, not in Florida, but in North Carolina, and I was on the North Carolina Board of School Nurses. It was a constant battle to get funding from the state to fund school nurses, and I'm just wondering, I know the importance of having nurses in school, and you were talking about social workers and stuff for mental health, but that nurses play a big part in identifying students and trying to help them with the knowledge that we have. And I'm curious what Florida has as far as school nurses and the importance they feel for them.
That's a great question. I don't think that we have enough funding for our school nurses. Our school nurses definitely play a critical role in our public schools. To your point, I want to thank you for your service as a school nurse as well. We actually were reminded of the importance of our school nurses once again during the pandemic and during COVID-19. They provide critical resources on a number of different issues, and I think that that's something that we have to take a look at as well. So thank you for your service, and thank you for bringing that issue to our attention. Thank you all. Thank you for the very
Of What's the Buzz fame, Dennis Foley's going to come and give you a few facts.
Take me out to dinner, she says. Okay, like I know already. Usually when I come up and do What's the Buzz, I'm poking fun at or taunting the lunacy that is the Republican Party these days, the maggots, and their fearless leader. Today I'm going to be a little more serious. I want to focus on things that have happened recently, like every day I wonder, today is it going to be Lauren Boebert, Martin Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, Matt Gaetz, or Tommy Tuberville, who's going to answer the question, who is the dumbest person in Congress? Or I can focus on something like the zaniness going on right now over Taylor Swift, happening from a football player. But I'm not going to go there. I'm going to be serious for a minute. So here's something that happened just a couple of days ago that shows you the disarray that these Republicans are in. Their major fundraiser, who's not doing very well the last couple of cycles, resigned. The Republicans failed to impeach the Homeland Security Secretary by his cabinet. And most importantly, Republicans demanded a tougher border bill. They got it, and then they voted it down. How does that function? It doesn't. The last one I'll talk about briefly is the appeals court in Washington, D.C. ruled that Trump is not immune from charges. I want to talk particularly about two things, two Supreme Courts, the U.S. Supreme Court and the Florida Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court is listening to discussion right now, to oral arguments on an important case, on J6. And not J6, sorry, there's too many cases to keep track of. The Colorado case where they wanted to ban Trump from the state ballot to run for president. So they heard oral arguments. The first question was asked by Clarence Thomas, who should not even be listening to this case. He should have recused himself because his wife is an insurrection. From the questions that day, if you listen to the testimony, things are not going too well for Colorado because it appears the court, packed with Trump judges and other conservatives, like Sam Alito, who is actually helping the attorney who's fighting the case with his arguments from the bench. That's always a nice sign of nonpartisanship and lack of bias. So that case maybe isn't going so well. But here's what I say to that, and I agree with the commentators who made this point. In certain ways, we want Trump to be on all the ballots because we're going to kick his ass again. Turning to Florida, Andy, next slide, please. So to buttress a point that Carlos made about the argument about the abortion rights ballot measure, the constitutional amendment, these are conservative justices. All of them are anti-abortion, or as they call it, pro-life. Here's what the Chief Justice said during that discussion on February 8th. The people of Florida aren't stupid. I mean, they can figure this out. So I'm more than hopeful. I believe they're going to put this measure on the ballot, as is, and that we are going to vote it into law.
Mary Goldberg, where are you? Here. Okay. If you have not signed a petition yet for Barbie Hardenhall or for Gloria Hayward, who is running for clerk of the court, raise your hand so Mary can bring you a petition. And Sumter. And Lake.
Barbie Hardenhall is Lake.
Barbie Hardenhall is Lake, I beg your pardon. What we're going to turn to now is the fact that it's time to put some new folks on the board. And we've had a nominating process, and everybody's been reviewed, and Mike Falk is going to come up and tell us all about it.
Thank you, Diane. Welcome, Democrats. I'm Mike Falk. Next slide, Andy, please. Okay, for VP, the nominee is Dennis Foley. You all know Dennis, he was just here. Dennis and Diane, that sounds like a rock song, moved to the Villages in California in 2017. They joined the club very shortly after, and since then, Dennis, one of his first tasks was Dennis took over the neighborhood buzz, which you know is the buzz, and then joining the board as a director. Since then, he's been the club secretary, parliamentarian, treasurer, and director of communications. And he's also one of Diane Sumter County Democratic precinct captains and the Sumter Democratic Executive Committee state committee man. That's a mouthful. So anyway, next slide, please. Susan Houston, I think Susan's here. I saw her earlier. She's in the back. Susan is from, what is it, Broomall?
Yes, correct.
Broomall, Pennsylvania, near Philly. She's an Air Force veteran. Susan joined in '79, and she served in U.S. and overseas bases. And she retired after 25 years and then became a substitute teacher and swim instructor, as if just retiring wasn't enough. So after retiring, Susan and her husband moved to Tall Trees in 2020. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, Bill, are you here? Bill? Bill Knudsen, I know that there's some. Bill Knudsen is nominated for director at large. Bill's been here in the village since 2022, and he lives up by Spanish Springs. He grew up in Silicon Valley, and he also lived in Charlotte and Lake Wiley, I think is how you say that, in North Carolina. Bill attended Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, and he's a Vista volunteer, which is a domestic Peace Corps. Bill's been involved in political campaigns since '84. You probably saw his table in the ante room. He's got a lot of stuff on that thing. And Bill's career has been in private and public sectors, where he did economic analysis for commercial and residential real estate loans. Thanks, Bill. Phyllis Leopold, I don't know if Phyllis is here. Maybe not. Anyway, Phyllis is from Danbury, Connecticut. She's been in the Villages since September 2022. Phyllis's, her work history is in budgets, financing, and staffing a nonprofit. Her experience includes homeless services, domestic violence prevention, refugee immigrant resettlement, working with government agencies for funding for various nonprofit entities. Next slide, please. Eric's been on the board for 2 years. He's continuing as director at large. Eric's been here since 2021. He's an attorney, originally from Baltimore, where he represented local politicians, the mayor of Annapolis, and 3 of Annapolis' 7 aldermen. He also wrote the Annapolis law on counting of absentee and provisional ballots and led canvassers for contested elections. He is also the general counsel for 2 Maryland Central Committees. Next slide, please. Ash Marwa is he's a candidate for programs director. Programs is the part of this club where the speaker today is putting this program together. That's what programs director does. So Ash grew up in New Delhi, India. Came to the U.S. when he was 21. He received his master's in civil engineering from Carnegie Mellon. And he stayed in Pittsburgh for 48 years, Pittsburgh area anyway. He retired in 2010. and he's been serving the public, and he continued serving the public in the Pittsburgh area. Ash moved here in 2017, and during the 2022 election cycle, he ran for Florida House District 52. Ash is also a volunteer teacher and treasurer of the Property Owners Association. Thank you, Ash. I want to take a second to thank all the volunteers and everybody who we interviewed and who the nominees were for volunteering their time and their expertise to help out the Village's Democratic Club. I also want to, on behalf of the club, give some recognition to my teammate, my nominating committee teammates, Amy Shaw, Harriet Stein, Bob Jansen, and Larry Berman. You probably know all of them. Thanks a million. We also have anybody who is interested in serving and volunteering their time. If you don't want to be a director or in leadership, and you have stuff to share, every one of you has expertise and skills that we can utilize in the Village's Democratic Club. We look for diverse people. We appreciate anything you do to help us out. It's going to get a busy year. Thanks a million, everybody.
The guy who never forgets anything forgot to say something. I'm saying.
So, Taylor Swift. I told you the Republicans were going nuts about her. Well, it turns out, when she was at the Grammys accepting her third Album of the Year award, she announced, as a surprise, these Swifties are way ahead of me. She has a new album coming out. And a couple days later, we have learned the names of the tracks on the album. One of those tracks is called Florida, with 3 exclamation points after it. So, that being the case, it also came out that she scheduled a tour to launch this album, and that she's doing 3 concerts in Miami, October 18, October 19, and October 20, right before the early voting period starts in November. So as you might imagine, Democrats on the state party level are ecstatic and hopeful that Taylor will say something really important concerning the election, particularly in Florida, while she's in Miami. And so Maxwell Frost, our Generation Z congressman, who is also a musician, has started promoting this event. And the young Democrats, the college and high school Democrats, we had Rhea Manyar from the high school group here a couple months ago. They have already planned to go down en masse to register people to vote if they can, it's still time, or to get them to vote by mail, to encourage voting and getting out the vote. And they're going to hold a Taylor Swift karaoke event. So I'm just here to tell you to brush up on your Taylor lyrics. We're going to go down and show those kids how to sing.
Thank you all so much for coming today. We had a great speaker. We learned a lot. So until we see you next time, there's a breakfast coming up on the 14th. My birthday, you can come for that. And I will see you there.